In early Indian shrines from the 2nd century BC onwards, the focus was on meditation. The aim was release from the cycle of the pain of life. Forms of the world were presented on railings and gateways, as well as on the exteriors of rock-cut caves. With the passage of time, forms of the life of the world came into the interior of the hall of meditation. However, closer to the heart of the hall, there were no forms. The gentleness of the figures we passed had prepared us, till finally we were to meditate upon that which was formless and beyond the world of form, beyond desire and pain. Coming into India from the north, Mathura is strategically placed at the entrance to the plains of the river Ganga. Thus, it was a major junction of trade. It was also a great center of culture and art. Under the Kushanas, who ruled from the 1st to the 3rd centuries AD, Mathura became the summer capital of their empire. The Kushanas, or the Yu-Chi, were tribes who came from southern China. They patronized Buddhism and the Brahmanas as Indian kings had done before them. However, theirs was a different vision. The subject of art in India was the eternal themes, not transient personalities. Trees and flowers, birds and animals, mythical creatures, the common people, creatures that combined these different beings, these were presented in art. So were yakshas and yakshis, who personified the spirit and abundance of nature. In this vision, there were no portraits of kings, even though they were benevolent to all streams of religious thought. Jaina Tirthankaras and Buddhas, or enlightened ones, were also not depicted. They were alluded to by symbols of their achievement and presence. The Kushanas brought a different outlook with them. The coins made by the Kushanas were the first in India to have portraits of kings made on them. Near Mathura, as well as at their other capital at Peshawar, they built royal shrines with images of themselves. These statues have inscriptions from Kanishka's period at the beginning of the 2nd century AD. This is Vima Kadphises and is described as King of Kings, Son of God, etc. It is made out of the typical red sandstone of the Mathura school. Another portrait statue has a similar inscription, this time bestowing the royal and divine titles upon Kanishka. He is again dressed as a Scythian with padded boots and heavy clothes. The clothing is not made in the Indian style where it reveals the body shape. In this monumental depiction, the emphasis is on the military powers of Kanishka. The cult of the worship of kings did not last beyond the rule of the Kushanas. However, in this period, a new focus came on the depiction of personalities in art. Images of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Jaina Tirthankaras, Shiva, Vishnu, Kartikeya, and other Hindu deities were created. These followed the earlier models of the Yakshas and Nagas. Kushana coins present some of the earliest images of the Buddha. A Kushana coin also brings a very early image of Lord Shiva. He is seen with his characteristic trident and Nandi the bull who accompanies him. The first formalized deity seen in Indian art was Lakshmi, lustrated by elephants. In the Mathura region, we see an expressive image of her. She stands on lotuses, rising out of a Purna Ghata or vase of plenty. She symbolizes the nurture and fruitfulness of nature. Peacocks made on the rare represent immortality. From the 2nd century BC, there were 2 Jaina stupas at Kankali Tila near Mathura. Sculpted remains have been found which show the close similarity of art as well as that of the symbols of both the Buddhist and Jaina faiths. The region also had flourishing temples dedicated to Naga deities. An imposing image over 8 feet tall, inscribed as a Bodhisattva, was installed around 100 AD at Shravasti. It was donated by a bhikshu or monk named Bala. The standing Bodhisattvas or Buddhas carry forward the formal frontality of earlier Yaksha figures. This emphasizes their monumentality. The body displays the softness of human flesh, unlike muscular and athletic depictions. A cloth goes across the left shoulder and hangs over the arm in very fine pleats. The form in which the Buddha was presented was that of an enlightened being, one out of many, with 32 attributes that identified him as such. The long arms and elongated earlobes, as well as the urna, a mark on the forehead, and the ushnisha, on the top of the head, are some of the auspicious marks. A number of images of seated Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have been found, including a fine one from the Katra mound. It was donated by Amoha Asi, a nun, for the welfare and happiness of all sentient beings. This is a common wish expressed in donative inscriptions at Naga, Jaina, and Buddhist sites of this period. The quality of prana or inner breath is evident in the figure. There is a quality of animation and life which marks this figure as a masterpiece of Kushana period art. Behind his head is a large halo with scalloped edges, representing the emanation of light. The Bodhisattva Maitreya is the next Buddha to be in the world. At Kankali Tila near Mathura was found an image of Surya, who represents the sun. He was also seen in the 2nd century BC in a vihara at Bhaja in western India. Iranian influences are seen in the boots, jacket, and moustache. Naga deities seen here continue a tradition seen in Indian art from the 2nd century BC at Bharhut. An architectural fragment from Mathura shows an image of a Shiva Linga being worshipped. Several lingas of this period, with one face and with 4 faces, have been found. As with other early deities in Indian art, they represent the creative forces of nature. Kartikeya is depicted carrying a spear. He was later incorporated into the Hindu pantheon as the son of Shiva. While images of deities were coming into being in the art of Mathura, the main focus still remained on stupas, Buddhist and Jaina. As in previous times, the railings and gateways of these stupas presented the boundless fruitfulness of nature and the joy of life. The Jain stupa depicted represents the ultimate goal of every being. As we approach it, we are greeted by images of the creative forces. The yakshis and the trees which they stand against or grasp represent nature. We must remember that in Indian thought, all beings, human, animal, and plant, are intrinsically the same. This kinship of life is perfectly expressed in these images, where the touch of a maiden brings trees to blossom. As seen from the 2nd century BC onwards, at the Bhaja caves in western India, the artist delights in creating balconies above with figures looking out. These yakshis are made on the pillars of the railings of the Buddhist stupa at Bhuteshwar near Mathura of the 2nd century AD. They stand on dwarfs or ganas. The summer capital of the Kushanas was at Peshawar in the Gandhara region. Buddhism had reached this area in the 3rd century BC with the emissaries sent by Ashoka. This region was at a meeting point of the cultures which travelled on the trade routes from China to the Mediterranean. Concepts of Indian philosophy, which placed emphasis on the renunciation of worldly desires, were new to many here. Kanishka held the 4th Great Buddhist Council in Kashmir. This was the first time that Mahayana Buddhism was given the full support of royal patronage. The council was also significant for making the Sanskrit language the main vehicle for Buddhist scriptures. Little remains of the numerous Buddhist monuments which were made in the Kushana times in the Gandhara region. However, vast numbers of sculptures of this period have survived. The stone these are made from is the local grey schist. The sculptures of this region show influences of Mediterranean and Persian styles. Instead of the spiritual, idealized forms of the Indic mainstream tradition, these attempt to present the appearance of people in the world and their everyday expressions. The drapery shows the influence of Western models. Whereas in the Mathura school, the figures are presented in transparent, light clothing, here the garments are made with heavy folds, and a great emphasis is given to their plasticity. The body is more muscular, in keeping with Greek and Roman norms. In early Buddhism, the focus was within oneself, on the potential for enlightenment which is in each of us. In the Gandhara region, the attention began to go more towards the heroic personality of a Buddha and other Buddhas as distinct individuals. These could be prayed to for their help. A number of Buddhas, as mentioned in scriptures, including Gautama and Dipankara Buddha, are depicted. The Jatakas, or stories of the previous lives of the Buddha in the form of different men and animals, were the subject of the earlier art. These were based upon the Indic philosophic view, which saw the unity of all of creation and the cycle of births in the world of forms. The population of the Gandhara region was not deeply versed in this philosophy and would have found it simpler to relate to the life of the individual Gautama Buddha. The worship of the stupa continued in Gandhara. However, the stupa was considerably smaller, and it was surrounded by rows of image shrines. These contained images of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and their large numbers indicate the shift in the emphasis of worship. Unlike Gautam Buddha, who is beyond worldly adornments, Bodhisattvas are made with jewelry. Beyond the world of forms, the stupa had earlier been kept plain. Now, narrative panels relating the life of the Buddha were placed on it at the base. The four great events in the Buddha's life were presented most often. Other incidents and legends from his life were also introduced. Here the emphasis became more on the drama of life in the ephemeral world. Human life, personified in the Buddha, before and after enlightenment, became the vehicle of the message. Depictions in the Gandhara region significantly dramatized the events of the Buddha's life and presented them with charged emotions. The first of the four great events to be presented in the narrative sequences which were created was the birth of the Buddha. Here, Queen Maya is made in the continuing tradition of Yakshis, who stand beneath trees. The name Maya means the illusory nature of the world of forms, and is there as a constant reminder in Buddhist lore. At the event of his enlightenment, the Buddha is depicted meditating under a peepal tree. Mara, meaning to kill, represents the turbulence of desires within us. He and his army are shown attacking the Buddha with a variety of weapons. The Buddha remains serene. The first sermon is depicted with deer below to indicate the location at the deer park at Sarnath. The final great event is the parinirvana of the Buddha, when he leaves behind the pains and shackles of his earthly body. The expression of grief of his followers is dramatic. Only one, the monk Subhadra, is peaceful, as he is aware of the transitory nature of all life. One of the most dramatic contributions of the Gandhara region to Buddhist art was the depiction of Siddhartha during his period of extreme asceticism. The narrative depictions and figures in the art of Gandhara were formulated by the end of the 1st century AD. The sculpture flourished at its best in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. The Buddhist art of Gandhara came to an abrupt end in the 5th century with the invasion of the Huns. In the meantime, the tradition of art in the northern plains of India continued to evolve. Mathura continued as a vital center of art. Sculptures made here have been found far and wide. This is noteworthy, as in this period it is sculptors who were usually known to travel, and not the artworks made in heavy stone. These were obviously used as models for the art of other regions. The portrayal of deities had become central to Indian art. These deities were the personifications of qualities. By meditating upon them, we awaken the best which is within us. By the Gupta period in the 5th century, the figures of Indian art presented a deep quality of sublime introspection. While living with joy in the world of outward forms, it was an inner journey. In the midst of the noise and clamour of the material world, peace was to be found within.